Who else do we have?
Norm.
Mangai Norm
Donovan.
and Councillor Donovan. So we have a quorum. I now want to note, and I'll seek advice, we have partial apologies from Mayor Southgate, who's ex officio on this committee. Also, Councillor Naidu-Rolfe is a potential partial apology or a full apology subject to her current work today in terms of the vaccination program, obviously. We fully support her for that. The third item is that Councillor Bunting has formally informed me that he is now has resigned from this committee as a member. Presumably I would just accept and note that resignation. I note that will be the subject of a further Chair's report at full council. So, noting the partial apologies from Mayor Southgate, Naidu-Rolfe, and the resignation of Councillor Bunting, I move those be received.
And 10 minutes late.
Right, and apologies from Councillor McPherson for lateness. Seconded by moved by myself, seconded Councillor Thompson. All those in favour, those contrary, that is carried. We now move to the confirmation of the agenda, and the agenda is as before you. There will be a couple of items I will be adding briefly and verbally to the Chair's report. I will move that the agenda be accepted. Seconded Councillor Thompson. All those in favour, those to the contrary, that is carried. Declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest with regard to this agenda? There appear to be none. Public forum.
None.
There is no person in the public forum. I now move to the confirmation of the Open Environment Committee minutes. So as I quickly go on to diligent and apologies. Okay, thank you very much. It's a right. Move that the minutes of the meeting of the 26th of August be received as a true and correct record. I'll second it, Councillor Thompson. In that case, there all those in favour. Any queries on the minutes? Those in favour, please say aye. Those to the contrary, please say no. They have been so moved. Right. We now move to the Chair's report. And I have a couple of items which I want to verbally quickly add to my report, which have been added in, I believe, by Diligent and also emailed. But first of all, and this is really frustrating that Charlotte cannot be here, but I'm going to read the first paragraph of my and Councillor Thompson's report, joint Chair's report. First of all, we wish to sincerely thank Charlotte, our Sustainability and Climate Change Manager, for her incredible work to date and the knowledge and expertise which she obviously brought to this role. Charlotte, as you know, has been a driving force behind the development of our climate change strategy and climate change policy, which are both coming to this committee early in the new year, and of course will be cornerstones to Hamilton Kirikiriroa's climate response going forward. Charlotte, as most of you will be aware, is taking parental leave, and we wish her all the best over this special and busy time. And we warmly welcome Kathy Kopek, who will be taking on the role of Sustainability and Climate Senior Advisor, and we look forward to welcoming Charlotte back sometime in 2022. And obviously, as you know, this committee has been somewhat thinly resourced because of a range of circumstances. That is being obviously through the GM and the Chief Executive and our annual plan process being addressed. But without further ado, Charlotte, if you're out there somewhere, dare I say it, thank you so much. It is quite weird when you're not in the room, but there she is, and she's actually in the building too, so that's great. Thanks, Charlotte. Sarah, have you got anything to add?
I'm really grateful for all the work that Charlotte's done to date and has progressed our climate strategy to a point where I think we can be, that our team can then take that on, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that early in the new year. So I wish you all the best, Charlotte, but also welcome Kathy and Poppy onto the team as well. So it's fantastic to have some extra resourcing, and you can see the results of that through the great report that's come through today.
Right, I'm going to take the Chair's report as read, and I will be going through it section by section, but I just want to, with the leave of the meeting, which I've given you, albeit somewhat brief prior notice, I just want to make mention in addition and have these noted in the minutes. And one is the COP26 conference in Glasgow. And of course, we've received input and correspondence from our former Mayor of Hamilton, Margaret Evans, who's, dare I say it, been in this space with groups such as ICLEI, even when she was Mayor, for a very, very long time. And she just reminds us, and I want to remind the committee that we note that the COP26 was beamed from Glasgow here into the Waikato. This was hosted by the University of Waikato and organised by the Toti Theatre of the Impossible Trust and CHEC with a respected Associate Professor Tom Raw, and support from the Waikato Regional Council via Environment Chair Jennifer Nichols and also the support of Waikato Tainui. They had a full 10 days of local panels involving about 60 panellists with daily updates live from Czech's team in Glasgow, all recorded and now viewable through the University of Waikato's events website and YouTube. Margaret has attached the final summary, which we've circulated to illustrate the local response, along with the easy access links to the amazing workshops at Glasgow, and also she draws our attention to, if you like, the historical journey in Hamilton, Kirikiriroa, and certainly literally going right back to her time as Mayor as well. The other item which Councillor McPherson and others and Sarah have reminded me is I've become aware and this of the campaign for free fares aiming to get more young people, tertiary students, using public transport. And again, there's been some media coverage of this, and I understand some councils already are pursuing this with regard to a campaign with central government. I should also very much acknowledge, under the previous Mayor Andrew King and the previous council, the work we've done in terms of public transport with regard to access for young people and people with disabilities. So we certainly in this have not been static in this space, and I do want to always give a shout out to Councillor McPherson's tenacious support, and I certainly a shout out to Andrew and that previous council. So I just want to note that it may be coincidentally whether some people wish to further pursue this via my Chair's report, I'm not sure. So with the addition of those 2 points, I'm just going to move that the Chair's report as in front of you is received, and then I intend to just go through it section by section just to see if anyone wants to. Right. Receives the, approves to support the free fares campaign to central government, which is seeking free bus for community card holders, tertiary students under 25s, and delegates to the authority to the Mayor to sign the petition on Council's behalf. So that is a proposal which, in terms of the context of the report, can be received and voted on or not, okay? So can I perhaps, just in terms of structure, what I might do first, if I can, is go through the other sections of the report first and then come back to the final item, which is the free fares discussion, okay? So I just note the progress on reducing transport emissions. Any contribution to that, albeit, you know, we've got further items in the agenda? And then, Councillor Sarah, with regard to looking ahead, our next Lake Whaiwhakariki, you may want to make some comment as Deputy Chair. Don't want to make comment on that?
No, I think it speaks well.
Okay, no, that's fine. And then nature in the city, of course, which is going to be the subject of a report to this committee. So since when, moving on to the final two items, and the final item, I understand there was Councillor McPherson had indicated he wished to speak.
Well, now they can get a word in edgewise, and thank you very much for, what do they call it in Parliament, where they delay things so someone can get there in time, so thank you for that. Yeah, that's the one. From the chair, it's unusual from the chair.
In our case, we facilitate a magic carpet for you to be in the chamber, Councillor McPherson. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just checking that I think I would like to add a D, which would be to asks the council delegates to the Regional Connections Committee to take this issue up in that body. Is that all right, Becca? Something like that, wording like that for a D, so that we do all of what's said there, plus we take it up with the Regional Council.
And we note that this is a recommendation to council. We don't exercise any delegated authority. This will be further debated at council. Would you like to second the chair's motion, Councillor McPherson?
I would be most happy to. Who's moving it?
Councillor Thompson.
Okay. I was just one interesting being asked for the seconder before you asked for the mover.
Right, that's all right. No. So, do you want any questions before I go to discussion? If there's no questions, Councillor Thompson as mover.
So I just I emailed through very briefly. I don't know if you've had a chance to look for Councillor Mark and.
I don't know where I've seen it, but for some reason it looks familiar.
Yes.
So have I seen it on social media or?
I circulated it a few, probably a week or so ago.
You did by email, that's right, yeah.
And so I just thought this could be an opportunity for us to consider it as a council. But Norm and Angela, have you been able to see the wording of the petition itself? Yeah, okay. Are we in debate?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, okay. Thanks, it's just checking.
No more filibuster.
All right. So firstly, in terms of the Chair's report, I think it largely speaks for itself, but just really highlighting the need for us to move a lot faster, particularly around transport, because that is not only our biggest source of emissions, but it's also the area where we have the most influence as a council in terms of emissions. And a lot of that work is happening through the Infrastructure Committee, but as a council, we'll need to keep looking at how we can move faster. In terms of the Free Fares campaign, I think that a key part of the transition to a low-carbon transport system is that it's equitable, and so we've seen subsidies for electric vehicles, but not everyone is going to be purchasing an electric vehicle in the next few years, and we also need to be looking at how do we make other forms of transport convenient and accessible. And one of the reasons a quick personal story of why I think this is important in terms of reducing the cost of public transport. I recently was speaking to a teacher at a school here in Hamilton and was told about a family where the children, usually walk quite a distance to school every day, but when it is bad weather and it's raining, they often just stay at home because the cost of taking the bus is too much once a number of children take the bus there and then back home again. And so I don't think that we should have the cost of transport being a barrier to education. And there's many other stories out there, I'm sure, where the cost of transport is a barrier. So it's both a way to encourage more people to take public transport, but also make the transition fair for people.
Councillor McPherson, I notice I have Councillor O'Leary on the speaking list. Would you like to speak later or now?
Oh, I don't think I'll be needing to answer any points from her, but
Yeah.
you go, Ange.
Yeah, Angela?
Okay, thank you. Look, I very much support this. And I, as I said to Councillor Sarah, I was quite disappointed when I read the proposal from these two, or the petition from the two, I think it's two university students that have put it all together. They've done a tremendous amount of work. But it's really disappointing to look down the bottom in partner councils and see the likes of Porirua, my old town, and I think it was Dunedin and a couple of others, and not see Hamilton there. So really support this motion. Look, I am of the view, and I will continue to be of the view that PT in New Zealand should be free for everyone, because that is how we will actually get a game changer. But that's probably not going to happen. So if we have to take small bites of the elephant at a time, then look, I'm happy to go along with that. I've just been appointed, which is going to be confirmed at the council meeting, on the regional Waikato Regional Transport Group, their Transport Emissions Working Group. And after talking to Councillor Dave, we're appointing Councillor Sarah as as an alternate with her two hats of deputies on. And look, that job for that working group is to come up with an action plan to achieve the region's target of a reduction in emissions by 30%. So again, this will contribute to a very, very small portion, but if it has to be baby steps, it has to be baby steps. And also really happy to support taking this discussion through to the Regional Connections Committee, along with my other fellow colleagues who sit on it as well. So great work, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson?
Thanks. Look, I actually strongly support Angela's strategic direction that she's outlined, the free fares, because it's clear that you can only make marginal changes by tinkering. If you want to actually get big changes, you have to make bolder moves than we've done. I think this is a bold tinker, I'd put it. It's not all the way there, but it's more than what we did before, which was free transport for under 18s in out of hours. And the lesson we learnt there was that we had a huge uptake. There were a couple of security issues arising as a result, and that gave us some good lessons for the future. But there were very big increases in teenagers using our buses on Friday nights, any weeknights, weekends, and it showed that it increased their mobility. It reduced the expenses to them in accessing different attractions, shops, whatever, around the city, their friends. It became a social element in their lives as well. There are a whole lot of those sorts of advantages which you don't get by so much. You certainly don't get the security and safety by having one mate, 15-year-old mate with a car, or is it 16 now, and all the problems that arise with that sort of thing that Mark and I used to face when we were younger. It was too long ago for you, Sarah, that sort of problem.
I weren't even born.
But no, seriously, it's a good move. I think we should be, regardless of what the government does, we should be working with the regional council, which is why I put D in there, to try and localise a response like this. The government has talked the talk but not walked the talk in this area in the 4 years that they've been around. We need to start putting the pressure on them, and this is a good part of it. I don't think it's going to break the bank, because what it will do is, if you teach the people younger that this is the bus transport is a good way to go, public transport generally, then you're going to reduce the pressure on your roading network as far as the cars that do need to use it and the freight vehicles that need to use it in future. So that's why we should be making as many moves in this area as possible right now. Thanks.
Any other speakers before I sum up? No other speakers? Just obviously want to support the sentiments that have been expressed. Also, a shout out also to Chair Russ Remington, the Regional Council, in terms of the partnership and what we did achieve with them. This is a partnership between us and the Regional Council. And certainly shout out to Chair Russ, but also to Angela and those of you and Dave who sit on the Connections Committee with Regional Councillor Angela Strange. I think that's an excellent team, and I'm hoping that that team will be able to progress this further. And if we're going to talk about mode choice, I think it's Luxembourg. There is a country in Europe where literally every time you step onto a bus, it's you don't pay. Okay, the society as a whole pays, but they pay as a whole for a very, very real reason. But the more we can actually improve access to public transport, and most importantly access for those who may have income constraints, access to mobility, who either have income or disability constraints. Mobility is a very, very important aspect of living in a cohesive and free society. Fully support the motion. Councillor Sarah, in reply.
Thank you. Just 2 points following from Councillor Dave's speech. Firstly, I love statistics, so I just wanted to bring up one example of where free fares has worked really well, and that's in Tauranga. So the Bay of Plenty Regional Council there trialled free fares for students in Tauranga going to and from school, and over that time, over 1 year, they had a 30% increase in the number of students taking the bus to and from school. The other thing Councillor Dave raised, which is ongoing frustration, is the fact that this government is making the right noises but not putting its money where its mouth is when it comes to mode choice and actually decarbonising the transport system. We've only got, out of our National Transport Fund, only 2% of this goes to walking and cycling. And the percentage going to public transport is larger, but it is also not enough. So there needs to be a step change in how much is actually being allocated to walking, cycling, public transport and these kinds of initiatives here. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now put the motion as on the screen. I assume that those in Zoom land have that in front of them as well. I will move the motion as in front of you. In this case, all those in favour, please raise your hands.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. We now move on to the Nature in the City update. The presenter, as I understand, is Luke Archbold and Helen Parkey. Is Luke in the room?
Luke's on Zoom.
Oh, Luke's on Zoom. Thank you. Thank you, Luke. And again, I have to look around the room. You're not here, but I have to teach myself to look on the screen, so you are in the room. Luke, we're in your hands.
Thank you, Chair Gallagher, and thanks, Sarah, as Deputy Chair as well as all other attendees. Hopefully we're going to start with the video and just awaiting Carmen to kick that off for me, please.
Te toto o te tangata, he kai. Te oranga o te tangata, he whenua. Nature is our most powerful dog. It helps shape healthier, stronger communities. It provides clean water, shade, fresh air, thriving bird life, and peaceful places to rest. Now it's time for us to give back. We're beginning a 30-year journey that will restore nature in our city. Together, we'll increase native vegetation cover to 10% by 2050. That's hundreds of thousands of plants. We will protect and enhance the land, wildlife, and ngahere for future generations, and increase the places our community can go to connect with nature. We're committed to shaping a greener Hamilton, Kirikiriroa. But to grow a greener city, we need to work together. With your help, we can leave a legacy we can be proud of, one plant at a time. Let's protect and nurture our tonga. Whakatutuki tahi atu, achieving more together.
Thank you, Carmen, and hopefully the sound and picture work well for everybody. I'm excited today to provide you with the first of what will likely be many updates for nature in the city. There is one part that I'd like to highlight from the report today, which is the benefits map attached. While the overall objective for nature in the city is to achieve 10% cover by 2050, please note the benefits within the map which demonstrate what we look to achieve within the first 10 years of the program. While we aim to contribute 3% of that 10% within the first 10 years, the focus will also be broader and wider towards biodiversity gains that build the overall resilience of our ecosystems within Hamilton City. We also grow the number of our community who access our natural areas, noting the importance that such activities play to people's well-being. And lastly, we'll also focus on increasing participation in volunteer restoration and recognise the need for the wider community as well as other agencies to help us in this journey of achieving 10% native vegetation cover. I will take at this point that the remainder of the report has been read and I'm available and ready to answer any questions.
Right, thank you. First of all, start with questions. Councillor Thompson.
Firstly, thank you, Luke, and also welcome. Is that my mic working? There we are. And welcome to our team as well. It's fantastic to have you on board, and thank you for the report. I just had a question around the reason why we chose, say, Donny Park first versus another area of the city. I mean, there's so many areas I guess you could choose from, but just interested in what was behind that.
Yeah, so the focus in the initial year is scaling the program up as well as doing planning to enable us to be successful over the full 10 years. We chose Donny Park as an opportunity to pilot our approach and to partner with the local community that had already acted at Donny Park in native restoration. So this is about collaboration, engagement with and learning with those that have already acted at place. We also noted that the location has some infrastructure, but not huge amount of infrastructure requirements. So that means we've got ready and easy access for restoration activities straight away, as well as timing with some of the work from other parts of council that we can collaborate and work with, namely the Waters team.
A question from Mango Norm.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Luke, can I acknowledge the video? Really proud to recognise the cultural context and input in terms of Te Reo Māori and the cultural aspect of our environment, inclusively, collectively looking forward. I think it's important to recognise a key mantra within Kirikiriroa in the context of the taiao, or our environment. And there's a cultural saying, and it reads, Tōku awa koe ora me ona pikonga he kura tangi hi o te mātāmuri. It recognises te ture whaimana, the vision and strategy, and King Tāwhao, when he stood upon Pirongi and looked at the Valley of Waikato, he said the river of life had each been more beautiful than the last. I think it's important in key comms and videos that we give recognition and homage and respect to the greater strategy within the strategy around the river, biodiversity inclusive of waterways, streams, gullies, and other heritage values associated with the environment. So thank you for the video. I think there's a strong connection to the vision and strategy to whaimana, but it might be good to recognise that when comms are provided for. And I apologise, my laptop's gone puckaroo on me, it's gone flat. But I just wanted to acknowledge the connection where relevant and where applicable to he pou a manawa taiao. And if you look at the outcome sought in terms of he pou manawa taiao under he pou manawa order, there's some key outcomes there that give recognition to all those key drivers, attributes, and overall impact of our environment contribution. So I just wanted to put a plug in terms of connection to our overall Māori wellbeing plan for Kirikiriroa.
Thank you. Further questions? If there are no further questions, I will, a further question, then we'll go to debate. Question, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. It was actually a question you raised yourself, I think, yesterday, and that was around, Luke was just interested in the opportunities outside of the gullies for planting more native vegetation. And I understand that the team's looking at things like transport corridors, but I'd be keen to hear a bit more about what those opportunities look like.
Yeah, so the first, I guess the first 3 years have quite strong focus on engagement and collaboration for a reason. And that reason primarily is that to reach that 10% coverage, we need to look outside of the gullies and we need to look at those other opportunities. And so we'll actively be engaging both internally with our waters team, our transport team, with the growth team, around what those opportunities look like to undertake native restoration and shift to a more Indigenous dominant landscape. We're also looking to engage with other agencies that have common interest in this area and looking at other landholders, including private landholders, and how we can utilise what we can do in nature in the city to help them with their own planting as well.
And does that include things like Mairoa and Fairfield schools?
Yeah, so schools are going to be a big part, I believe. We understand the importance, I guess, of getting in early and getting the younger generation involved in native and urban restoration.
One last question, supplementary to that, is the Waikato Hospital, do they have any land where or opportunities for greening there, given in the strategy it talks about the importance of nature in terms of wellness and recovery and things. I'm just interested if there's any opportunity there at all.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I will take that away to the program team to engage with the hospital and find out.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question. It came up in the workshop yesterday where, you know, how we look at green space, and obviously, you know, we have needs for mowing sports fields, but with regard to green space in terms of, you know, vegetation and planting, presumably we're reviewing all of our green space and potential future purchase of green space in terms of our nature in the cities and carbon sequestration and all the stuff that we need to do in this area?
Yeah, so we will be looking at the areas of open space that we manage that has the opportunity to provide some areas for native restoration. And it's just about balancing that activity with all of the other elements that provide our community with opportunities that are, you know, enhance their well-being and make it an enjoyable place to be.
And can you confirm that yourself and Maria Barry will welcome sharing with the Chair and Deputy Chair there intricate knowledges of Mayors Rogers and Minogue and the then land bank that they created, which is a result of Lake Whaiwhakariki. Whaiwhakariki is because a previous council purchased land as part of a land bank program, and basically looking at future opportunities for land banking.
Yes, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Further questions?
Thanks, Maria.
Further questions? Right, we go to debate. I'll start with Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you for the work that you've done on this, Luke. It was really clearly presented in terms of what the actions are going forward. I'm really excited to see the MOUs with the schools in the next 3 years, the educational side of things. So it's, fantastic way that you've presented all the steps we're taking over the next 3 years to progress this. And I'm very happy that we're finally getting some more resourcing into maintaining our gullies. I went for a bike out along Peacock Road, thought I'd take a shortcut through Mangakotukutuku Gully. Wasn't a shortcut and got lost, but in the meantime, looking at those massive banks around the gully, and it's a beautiful place, but it's totally invaded with weeds, and it's being strangled by invasive weeds. And I just imagined what that place will look like in a few years' time when we've gotten in there, we've started to remove those weeds and do further work to restore it alongside of the stream care group there. So it's a magic place, and if you can get lost in it, then it shows its size as well. So very, very excited to get this work underway. Thank you.
Further contributions?
Also, the video was very good.
Mangai Norm.
Tēnā koe, Luke, just want to acknowledge our cultural whakatauki at every bend of the river. There's a river of 100 chiefs. So I just want to acknowledge the leadership with the team in bringing about unity to restore the health and well-being of the Māori, cultural essence of the holistic connection to place, spiritually and metaphysically and physically. So just acknowledge you as a guardian of our being of our river. Thank you for your mahi, and may it continue. Tēnā koe.
Further contributions? Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Chair. And just backing up what Councillor Thompson said as well, it's nice to, it's not nice to see some of that work that needs to be done. I think a few people are aware now that I bought a bicycle the other day, and I have started riding around the city, and I did the river ride the other day, and there's certainly parts of it that needs, do need attention. And I think when I first joined council, I may have mentioned the piece that I was involved in where we adopted a length of the river and we tidied it all up from a corporate perspective. So I hope that part is not lost in, and maybe it was in the report, which I thought was fantastic. I might have read over it, but just the one other thing that I may note is it's pretty obvious why they chose Donny Park as the first one to kick off. I mean, guy with a nickname like Donny.
It was because I used to live just round the corner.
That's my favourite park. Thanks.
Thank you. Further contributions? I'll just add, if I may, and I obviously want to very deliberately shout out to Luke and Maria, and not only for writing the report, but how crucial it is that we have on our staff team, I've said this before, people with Australasian reputations, people who bring incredible expertise, vocation, dedication to this task, and obviously have an expertise that I, as an elected member, are deeply grateful for. And certainly, I think, the vision of this particular project, we will see, obviously, in years to come. I mentioned Lake Whaiwhakariki before in terms of an incredible example of, if you like, a major natural heritage area. And that was, as I said in my chair's report, transformed through hundreds of hours of work from dedicated community volunteers. And in that sense, I want to absolutely honour and shout out to the many people in the community who are going, and dedicated organisations and individuals who are going to work with their council in partnership. In our report, we then mentioned that thanks to the vision of previous city leaders, in particular Mayor Mike Minogue, but also Dennis Rogers and their councils, Whaiwhakariki was secured for the benefit of Hamilton Kirikiroa residents, and over time was able to be restored. And it was my huge pleasure to be with Conservation Minister Chris Carter when that particular restoration was launched. I was a local MP back then. It is really important, again, to look forward to engage in the green space planning at its broadest level, and we discussed this yesterday in the workshop. Not just planning for parks and soccer fields, and that's sort of, if you like, the mown, manicured parkland, which is also crucial, particularly for sports, but also opportunities to grow what we call the green lungs of our city. And I think I've mentioned issues of streetscapes, the concrete jungle parts of our city. What are nature in the city is about the streetscapes, the planting, the restoration of our gullies. What does the green Hamilton Kirikiroa look like in 2040, 2050? I also am very interested personally with talking to Dave and Ryan with regard to the Metro Hamilton Urban Growth Strategy, and in that context, where is the future city expansion? What are there some potential opportunities to work with our neighbouring councils to grow those green lungs, and also to ensure some good climate outcomes as well? And I notice I've been timed out at the bell. Any further debate? Right. I will now put the motion that the report be received.
We need a mover and a second.
You can move that. Councillor Thompson can move it, and Councillor McPherson can second it. Right. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
Don't forget Councillor Mark, Mr Chair, he's got to prove he's here as well.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Next one. Right, thank you. We now move to the item 8, update on the 2021-22 Climate Change Action Plan, and we're in the hands of Charlotte Catmuir.
Thank you, Chair Martin. So I just want to draw your attention to the monitoring aspect of this report, which is on page 50 to 62 of the Council report. So following the feedback on last year's monitoring report around the Climate Change Action Plan for 2020-2021, we've updated the way we're monitoring to include a traffic light system. So it's really trying to be clearer around how we're going with actions across the whole organisation. So we will continue to report over the next year in this fashion if it is useful to elected members. And then I'll take the rest of the report as read.
Right. Questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Charlotte. This is useful, this way of presenting this with the traffic light colours. I am interested in the fact that, so our emissions have gone up since the last year, and we've been transitioning to electricity as the energy source, rather than moving away from natural gas. But at the same time, that relies on the grid actually moving to renewable electricity. So what opportunities do you see there potentially being for us to look into other ways to address this, where the grid isn't moving as quickly as we'd like it to renewables, and right now we've actually seen an increase in coal use?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Sarah. So I think there's a few things, largely in the roadmap that we've got at the moment to achieve the 50% reduction in our emissions by 2030. We've got energy efficiency projects that are looking more around technology. So I think there are opportunities for us to further look at reducing energy consumption, but then also whether there are any opportunities within council or different ways we could look at energy supply. I understand there's a bit of work going on around renewable energy and whether there is potential to look at where we could look at on-site generation or other renewable sources. That may help, especially as we can see that the grid is going to increase. Well, we know in the recent year that there's been more coal use in the grid, so we're not going to see the reductions we had anticipated as early on in achieving our 2030 target.
Okay, thank you. Another question I had was, it talks in the report about non-biogenic emissions, so basically your carbon emissions, and then you've got methane, which we're measuring separately. And I think, is that right? So, because I think the report focuses just on the carbon emissions.
You're right, so we've included the actions in here around non-biogenic methane emissions and achieving the target around 50% by 2030. I think that is a good pickup in that we can also be reporting on biogenic emissions target, which is also for 2030. That's largely is wastewater from the wastewater treatment plant, so we aren't reporting and measuring it as frequently, but it's definitely something we can be highlighting in future reports as to when you're likely to see those actions occurring.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, in the next update on the action plan, we could include something on that.
Yes, we'll include that as a staff action for us to include in the next update.
Okay, thank you. And does that include also, along with biosolids, does that include the methane that might come from landfilling?
So we have waste, which is talked about, so that's calculated based on the waste generation that we have from our sites that then is sent to through our contract to landfill. So that's how that's calculated in the waste section of the profile.
Okay, so that's already in the report.
Yes.
Okay. The last thing was just in terms of, so obviously we've kind of bounced back up after a year without any real, level 3 or 4 restrictions. What does the trajectory look like in terms of our emissions kind of over the next few years? And I guess, yeah, I'll leave it there.
So on page 35 and 36 of the report is where we've got all the actions that we currently have in place around achieving the 50% reduction target for 2030. We haven't done the work beyond that yet to look at what further opportunities there are to reduce emissions, but that's happening as part of the climate change strategy. So I think there's an opportunity for us to reassess our target and look at what the next target needs to be for our corporate emissions to make sure we're being as ambitious as we can be in terms of reducing Hamilton City Council's operational emissions.
Okay, thank you. And that might be something that has to then be considered for the next long-term plan if we were to move any faster.
Yes, definitely for the investments required, but I think there are also opportunities which we can look at around the way our behaviour change. It's definitely an area that we haven't spent time focusing on what level of reduction is achievable through changes in the way we sort of drive, use our transport, or we don't drive to meetings, etc. COVID's really shown us that we're very agile in the way we can do these Zoom meetings. So I think there's definitely, now with more resourcing in our team especially, opportunity to look at non-capital and those cost projects.
Okay, cool, thank you. That's all.
Further questions? Mungai Norm Hill, do you have a question? No?
No, nothing, Mr. Stewart.
Councillor O'Leary? No. Councillor Donovan? Councillor McPherson? Question? No. Okay, thank you. Right, if there are no questions, I will move that the, as per, now let me just go back to the original The item is that the Environment Committee receives the report and approves the changes to the 2021-22 Climate Change Action Plan as indicated in Attachment 1 of the staff report. And
I emailed through just an addition, so I'm happy for you to move it, or
well, no, Councillor Thompson, you can move, and I understood that Councillor O'Donovan had indicated he was going to second it.
Do you want to read it?
Right, thank you. So that's as moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Donovan. Right, Councillor Sarah speaking to the motion.
Can I just quickly explain? So essentially, I'm just concerned that we have a heavy reliance on just waiting for the national grid to be to move towards more renewable energy, and our whole strategy is like reliant on that. So I'm keen to just understand what opportunities there are to reduce our energy emissions beyond that. Yep. Cool.
Any further discussions? Any further contribution to the debate? Right, in Zoom land, obviously you see the additional item as per moved by Thompson and Councillor Donovan. There's no further debate, right? Sure.
Sorry, yeah. So firstly, just want to thank the team for their work on this. I think you can see quite a big difference between the reporting, say, a few months back and the reporting now. With that extra time and resourcing, it's made a really big difference, and there's a lot more detail here now in terms of the breakdown of our emissions and keeping track of all these different actions. So I really like the amber and green codes, and luckily there's no red that I can see on the side of that, to just give us a quick indication of the areas where maybe there's been delay or we need further work. It is obviously a bit disappointing that our emissions have jumped back up again. So the lockdown last year had quite an impact, and then we've gone a whole year with nothing more than a level 2 restriction. So I think that shows that we've got a lot of work to do to ensure that when we're at business as usual is actually sustainable, and that we need to work harder and faster to be reducing our emissions, particularly as an organisation. We need to show leadership in this space. In terms of the motion, I am concerned that at the moment we haven't seen any great progress on furthering. The government has the goal to get to 100% or 98% renewable energy for our national grid, but we haven't seen a lot of progress on that yet, and so it would be great to see that happening. But in the meantime, I think there's many reasons for us to at least explore on-site generation. At the wastewater plant, I think there is some work going on to look at how do we use the methane from that, to capture it, to actually create our own energy there. But there could be other opportunities, and it means we're also not subject to, say, changes in electricity prices. We know that that can be volatile. And so it could be a way for us to be more financially sustainable in this area too, potentially. But very keen to just explore that a lot further and understand the economics and the, I guess, emission side of that.
Thank you. Further contributions? Councillor Donovan.
Certainly echo what Councillor Thompson said, and you know, this report's fantastic. It's easy to understand for a simple layman like me, so I figure it must be pretty well put together. So thank you to the team for doing that. Look, we've got to lead by example, don't we? If we want if we want to see change happen. If we don't, then you know, we're going to just keep getting the same old results. I love I really like the use of the words collaborate. I like the fact that we're getting involved with schools, you know, through Enviro schools and all that sort of thing. Because if, you know, what's the old saying go? If you teach your children young, they something or other turn out to be good. I don't know. It's probably something like that.
Teach
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but you know, it's pretty simple, isn't it? I mean, the whole world is right across this now, and if we don't do something proactive in the same space, then we'll get left behind, and then we won't be the resilient city that we're trying to get to. So, no, all for it. I'm not selling my ute yet, though.
Thank you. Are there further contributions? Councillor McPherson?
Since mine's parked next to his.
Right. Further contributions? Monga Norm Hill?
I just here to support the way forward. Tēnā koutou.
Thank you.
Support the report.
Councillor O'Leary? Right. I think both Sarah and Mark made a really great contribution. I have nothing personally to add to that. Obviously thank our staff team for the significant work that we're progressing, and this is going to be for us as an organisation, as a city and nation, one of our defining aspects of our history at this time. Obviously incredibly defining. Without further ado, I just write a reply by Councillor Thompson, then I'll put the motion.
No.
Right, thank you. The motion is as it is up on the board and on front of you in Zoom land. I will so move. For those in favour, please raise your hands.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Right, thank you. We now go on to the final item, and that is the...
Mr Chairman, just a point of order to let you know that Simon Bridges is withdrawn from the race and Chris Luxon is being selected, well, I don't know about unanimously, it might be a stretch, but without opposition. Anointed. Anointed.
Right, thank you.
I thought you'd like to know that at this point in time.
Thank you for that, that update. Yes, indeed. Thank you. General Manager's report. Sean Hickey, we're in your hands.
Thank you, Chairman. I am happy to take the report as read and answer questions, and there is a couple of other staff available as well if there are questions on specific topics in the GM report.
Perhaps if we just go through section by section, the highlighted that is under discussion. Climate change program update. I'll just go through the section by section and I'll move through. If there's no questions, then I'll move to the next item. No questions on that. Councillor McPherson.
I'm just sorry. Just looking. I don't think there's a bit of reference to the Waikato Regional Council. Earlier in the year, the Waikato Regional Council endorsed a climate change response target, I'm not sure what the exact correct word, that was somewhat less than what our council were arguing for. I'm wondering what opportunity our council might have for renewing the discussion with them so that they can actually come up with a better result in future, like next year. So you may remember that it was in relation to their regional transport committee and the transport emissions program. Sarah, you might know the better the titles than that, but it was underwhelming from our viewpoint in our submission. And as the delegate at the time, I voted against accepting that target. And there was also a threat of some legal challenge from outside community parties as well to that, so which reflected something that was happening in the Auckland City Council area as well. So I haven't sort of got an update of where that's gone, if anywhere, and what opportunities we have for improving that.
So this might be, I might just make a comment on the forum that we've set up between Hamilton City Council and Waikato Regional Council. So the chairs and deputy chairs of both our Environment Committee, so Councillors Martin and Sarah, and the respective the chairs of the Climate Committee and Regional Council have established a regular forum now where these matters are discussed. So we did have the first of those about a fortnight ago, and it was a reasonably sort of productive conversation, but as the first of such sessions, the agenda was sort of focused on structure and kind of how those future conversations would be planned. That sort of topic of transport emissions obviously came up as being kind of a key area of collaboration, but that wasn't, the detail wasn't discussed at that session. I'm not sure if Charlotte, you would like to comment on the sort of the relative approaches to emissions targets that the organisations are taking. I would sort of note that we do have a session or a drop-in session available to elected members next week, looking at the emissions targets and approach that we're seeking to use in our climate strategy. Charlotte, do you want to add to that?
Just before she does, could I make the point that is it Jennifer Nicol that's the chair of their Environment Committee? I don't know who the deputy chair is, but I know Jennifer was in a minority of about 4, I believe, on their council who equally with us didn't agree with the soft target that was set, proposed by their staff. So there's quite a bit of politics in this as well. So I'm not just asking the question technically, though certainly that is part of it, Sean, but I'm raising it as a political issue as well.
Did you want to? I'll go to Charlotte first, and then I'll flick to Sarah to clarify that. Charlotte?
So from a broader emissions reduction target setting, so obviously that was a transport-focused one. Regional Council have just commenced the process looking at how do they set a target for the region for all emissions, and that includes looking at a decarbonisation pathway to achieve the target. Their approach at the moment is to understand what potential there is and what are the different metrics that we need to understand across the region to then be able to set an agreed target. So we're involved in that piece of work. We're also looking at an approach for our emissions reduction target for our climate change strategy, so a 2050 target. And we have been looking at different modelling and different approaches we could take on that target. So looking at both science-based, so trying to understand what the future climate science is telling us around the 1.5 degrees, and then also looking at the current modelling that's been done through the Climate Change Commission. So we've got that work to present next week, which is, again, looking at all emissions, but obviously for us, transport making up 64%, the transport modelling is a really key part of that as well.
Councillor Sarah?
Thank you. I was just going to add, there is a working group that Councillor Angela's on, representing us on, that's been set up with a small subset of Regional Transport Committee councillors led by Councillor Strange. Yeah. So they're kind of like the political group looking, overseeing that, and then I understand there's also a technical kind of staff working group. So this is my understanding, but it would be worth actually having an update maybe to come through, say in an email, just to clarify, but that's where the consideration that target will happen.
Can we do that as an action point in this, from this meeting, as a take-home action point? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, maybe I should just follow that up a bit by saying I'm a bit worried that the regional council looking at things only at an overall Waikato situation is sort of not going to be necessarily helping push us at all in Hamilton City, because if they take a region-wide approach, that's one of the reasons why it was a soft approach to start with, because they're trying to work out how they'll incorporate areas of the region that haven't got public transport within a bull's roar of them, versus Hamilton City, whereas, for instance, if they changed all buses to electric, had a drive for electric cars, networks or charging networks around the place, several things like that, you could have more of a quicker and larger effect within the city boundary. Not that that's the end of the story, but at the moment there's not much regional pressure on us to do much. So I'm just a bit worried about the sort of one-size-fits-all approach that they have adopted. I understand why they have. I don't agree with it, but you know, you can see their logic. They're trying to get the tin pot little councils around the outskirts on board and doing something, and in the meantime, the ones that are in a position to do more aren't being pushed.
Well, I would have to not necessarily describe tin pot, but Councillor O'Leary, because I know you've been obviously with your roles on the Regional Council and the Land Transport Committee, and I think you're of course on the committee concerned. Do you want to add anything, Angela, on that one, on this?
Mr. Chair, there's not a lot else that I can add at the moment. We've only had one meeting a few days ago, and that was really just housekeeping. We didn't start into the process, but it is, the outcome will be an action plan with targets, and it has to have obviously all the councillors signed up to that and agreeing with those targets, with those actions, to achieve that 30% emissions reduction for the region. So it's early days yet, but I think through the technical group can certainly report back through this committee as we progress. Meetings are going to be every 6 to 8 weeks. So.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further on that, I'll move to. Has moved us into the regional update.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Sarah.
I just had one question for Sean on, question around the climate change strategy. Sean, I am keen for that to be, and I've discussed this with Chair Martin already, but I'm keen to see that adopted by full council. So I'm wondering if we could give feedback on the strategy as a committee here early next year, but then take it up to full council for full consideration, not just as like a recommendation, which is at the bottom of a agenda in one line, kind of.
I think that should be fine. So I'll just work through the kind of governance processes with Becca or the appropriate person in governance, but I think that sounds fine.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, obviously any committee has the power, which we discussed, to always not take unto itself a decision making as such, in terms of it's brief. But this one, I think we're certainly minded to send whatever recommendation we make, send it through to council for final approval. Thank you.
Okay, so I think the implications of that are that what we bring to the Environment Committee in February is a sort of a draft or a sort of a version of the strategy which we get feedback on, and then it's a case of incorporating that and taking a report to the appropriate sort of council committee to consider and inform. That's the intention, isn't it?
And
yes.
Yeah,
and
sorry.
do we need to formalise that?
I'm going to go to Becca. I don't think so. I think Becca will obviously oversee the process from here on, and as the manager of governance and a successor. Do you have anything to add to that, Becca? All we're talking about is a process by which we, rather than something's it may be delegated to us in this committee under delegations, we choose not to exercise that delegation and send it to full council or another committee of the whole for final approval.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine under the current delegations. Under the common delegations, you can make recommendations, but you're wanting a little bit more than that, and you've got the report to go. Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Sean. And we can just note that in the report. Okay. But we don't need to do that either, because I know Sean's got that covered.
Sure. Okay. That can be an action note. Thank you. Sean, anything else? Now, I've got climate change program update. I think I now move to regional update, that section. Anything, questions on that? That takes us right through Regional Council, University of Waikato, Waikato Plan. If there's no questions, we then move to national and international update. Just read that section, have a look. That side, you know, that's taking us from points 25 through to 33. I'm waiting for hands to pop up, eyebrows to be raised. No. We move to resource, and just as from the chair, obviously Sarah and I, with the GM, have discussed further with the chief executive, the new chief executive, and certainly want to ensure that we maintain adequate resourcing for the work that this committee is doing. And I think items 34, 35, 36, 37 are fairly to the point and straightforward, but clearly we'll be very vigorous through the annual plan review to ensure that we maintain and grow our resource. Sarah, did you have anything to add to that? No, but it's in hand with our GM and Chief Executive. Any questions on that? Waste minimisation in parks. Questions? Hamilton City Council workplace travel plan delay. Sean, have you got anything to add to that? You have correctly talked about COVID-related staff workloads.
I was just noting that it was our intention to bring a report to this committee on that, but haven't been able to. So just noting that would come to the future committee meeting.
Right. Okay. I'll now move to the staff recommendation, which Councillor Thompson will move, and I understand. Councillor Donovan was going to move, and I understand Mongai Norm Hill was going to second, if he would be so great, would allow that. And moved by Donovan, seconded by Mongai Norm Hill, receives the report, notes that the report will be presented to the Environment Committee regarding options and improvements to litter management in parks and reserves prior to the end of 2022, and notes C that additional waste minimisation funding will be considered at the appropriate time within the 2024-34 long-term plan. So that is the, obviously we're receiving the reports, and then we note the additional parts with B and C. So moved. Speaking as the mover, do you want to say anything, Norm? Mark, I apologise. I'm getting my terms to.
Haven't been called Norm before, but I'll take
No,
that.
apologies, Norm.
Yeah.
The real Norm is still with us.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies.
No, nothing to add. It ticks all the boxes for me.
Right. Mongai Norm Hill, do you have anything to add?
I just use the Māori word tautoko, which means ka pai, move forward, tēnā koutou.
Thank you. Any contributions? Any further additions? Okay, no one else. I will put that report. Those in favour of the motion as before you, please raise your hands.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Right, and that brings us to the end of our meeting, and that's an hour and a quarter, not bad. Anyway, thank you all, and obviously certainly enjoyed the workshop yesterday for what it's, so I think the workshop plus this today has been great, and thank you all for your attendance. The meeting is now closed.